bridge.
いつもはリマインド用の機械を作るんだけど、特別に私がリマインドしてあげるよ。
Hello cadet, welcome back to my guide. Today I'll be showing you the second lesson. It will be about type counters, damage types you will deal, debuffs, gathering, time mastery, healing, fast attacks and heavy attacks, what actually is a burst in Honkai, and aerial attacks. Just like before, I will skip some things because that will be for later on. Now let's get started with the second lesson. I'm actually going to navigate to Aichan as well, because I want to make sure that you know how to get there. This will also help you when you want to try these tutorials out for yourself. Last time we covered evade, counter attacks, weapon skills, ultimate, and quick time events. I ignored special attack. The reason behind this is because it covers that each Valkyrie can do different things. Each Valkyrie is inherently different from each other, so there is a lot of diversity, and if you want to know something from a specific Valkyrie, you go to that specific Valkyrie's tutorial. So yeah, I find it kind of pointless, so moving on. Next up, type counters. Now this, in the first chapter when playing the story, Aichan was bothering you a lot, so I assume that you skipped a lot of stuff, but we are going to do it anyway.
Captain, Valkyrie battle suits and enemies are divided into three types: mechanical, mech, biological, bio, and psychic, psi. Mech counters bio, bio counters psi, psi counters mech.
So this is basically the same concept as rock, paper, scissors. Rock beats scissors, scissors beats paper, and paper beats rock.
Select Valkyries that counter the enemy type to fight more efficiently.
So, cadet, our enemy is a mech. What type do we use? That's right, psi.
This Valkyrie can counter the enemy and deal more damage.
Yes, thanks for your input. We use bio for psis.
This Valkyrie can counter the enemy and deal more damage.
Aichan, thanks for your input. These are bio enemies. And mech. Yes! Zito. Shut. Alright, as you can see, I am currently at a disadvantage. That's what the down icon is for, next to the health bar. I briefly mentioned this in the first lesson. Psi characters deal 30% less attack damage against bio-type enemies. And what am I doing right now? I am attacking with Psi against bio, which is not good. I am at a disadvantage. Currently I am attacking bio with bio. Right now, at the enemy's health bar there is no icon showing up. This is because there is no advantage nor disadvantage. So your damage is neutral. You will just deal normal damage. There is no bonus and there is no disadvantage. As you can see, the icon has returned. This time it says up instead of down. This time I am mech against bio, and this will mean that I'll deal 30% more damage against bio enemies. Now then, how can you tell what Valkyries are what type? Well, it's very simple. You just use filter and you can figure out the background of these characters is yellow. So this means these characters are all bio. Right below their name you can also see the type they are. Likewise with psychic, you can also see that every character that's psychic has a purple background. You can also see their type right below their name. And again with mech you can see that everyone has a blue background. Alright, that should be everything about type counters. Let's move on to damage types. What are all these icons? Well, Ursula of Thunder has lightning damage type. She can paralyze enemies. We'll cover that in just a sec. And she also has fast attacks. She has a burst mode. When you trigger her ultimate, she jumps on a dragon and this is considered a burst mode. Well, now there is a reason why I want to clarify what a burst is. First of all, not all ultimates are bursts, but all bursts are ultimates. Each burst mode is triggered by an ultimate ability, but not all ultimate abilities will actually have a burst mode. Once you start working with stigmatas, this is going to be very important, because stigmatas use very specific wording, and if you don't understand what's going on, then your stigmata is not going to work the way you want it. Next up, time mastery. If a Valkyrie has this, it means they can do the time fracture thing when you do an ultimate evasion, quick time event, or an ultimate ability, anything really. As you can see, other Valkyries have other icons on them. We'll cover each icon. The point is, it's all different for each character. Alright, there are two categories of damage. Physical is on its own, separate, and fire, ice and lightning are all part of one category, elemental damage. The reason why I'm saying this right now is because there are buffs you can gain that are mentioned to be elemental damage. It's sort of important to know that those three types of damage are all combined in one. Now, each type of damage dealer can inflict kinds of debuffs. Freeze, paralyze and stun are inflicted by ice, lightning and physical respectively. Bleed also belongs with physical damage dealers, just like Ignite belongs with fire damage. Freeze, paralyze and stun do the same thing, they keep the enemy in one place. Ignite and Bleed are also very similar with each other, they deal damage over time. Now let's see what Aichan has to say about this. The debuffs that I just mentioned are traumas.
Most enemies have 5 types of debuff: trauma, paralyze, freeze, stun, ignite and bleed. Paralyze, freeze, and stun are control debuffs. Ignite and bleed are damaging debuffs. Elemental attacks or attacks with debuff effects can inflict trauma. When trauma is full, enemies will suffer the corresponding debuff. The duration of debuffs differ. Control debuffs usually last 5 seconds, and damaging debuffs usually last 10 seconds. When landing attacks with debuff effects, you can inflict large amounts of trauma on enemies. The 5th strike of Dea Encore's basic attack sequence can inflict ignite trauma. Use Dea Encore to ignite enemies.
What Aisha is trying to show is that only specific attacks from specific Valkyries will inflict these traumas.
While enemies are affected by damaging debuffs, debuffs can be extended by inflicting additional trauma afterwards. Switch Reversed Calico on the field. Reversed Calico's ultimate can inflict rhyme trauma on enemies. Use Reversed Calico's ultimate to freeze enemies.
What even is rhyme? Well, rhyme is the effect when you touch ice and the surrounding aura around the ice is hurting you. So you know that painful feeling when you're holding something cold? That's rhyme. It's not really that important, but there is a Herrscher later on in story that is called Herrscher of Rhyme Star. If you know what rhyme is, then maybe that helps you being less confused. I know for a fact that I did not know what rhyme was before playing this game. Right, so I don't have much else to say about this, other than what Aichan has already covered. But I also want to point out that these traumas can be stacked on top of each other sometimes. In certain stages, these traumas will actually provide you with bonus damage. So it's best that you actually maximize these debuffs as much as possible when you're doing those kind of stages. Alright, next up I want to cover fast attacks and heavy attacks. These are important for breaking shields. Heavy attacks will be for elite shields and fast attacks will be for combo shields, or hit shields, whatever you want to call them. Now let's start with elite damage shields.
Oh no, these enemies have a shield and take reduced damage. Attacking enemies will reduce their shield value.
Right, so you can attack regularly, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use charge attacks, because that's the most effective way to break these types of shields, heavy attacks. Even though Carol's charge attack is not actually a heavy attack, it's just a charge attack. I suppose you could call it a pseudo heavy attack.
When the shield value reaches 0, the shield will break.
On another note, when Carol breaks a shield with a specific attack, she can actually prevent the shield from recovering for a while. That's the stop sign there. However, this tutorial stage will completely negate that effect. So it's just there, but it's not there.
Most enemies will slowly recharge their shield value after their shield breaks. Try to defeat the enemies before they restore their shields. Some enemies have elemental shields and require their corresponding elemental attacks to break the shield. From the color of the shield, you can tell that this enemy has lightning damage shield. Use Hersher of Thunder to break the lightning damage shield and defeat the enemy.
I would like to point out that I have no idea why they would show lightning shield when it's yellow and the physical shield is orange. It's kind of hard to tell, especially when you're a starter, but there is a difference between the colors. And yes, damage type specific shields are weak instead of strong against that specific damage type. So keep that in mind that you use the correct damage type to break that shield. Alright, next up, fast attacks for hit shields.
This enemy has a hit shield that is very different from an elite shield. To break a hit shield, you need to land a specific number of attacks on the enemy. Fast attacks are the best against enemies with hit shield.
Alright, this is kind of straightforward. You'll see that I'll deal absolutely no damage at all against the enemy until that shield is down. This is why the fast attacks are basically necessary. Now, what is weaken and what is impair? Well, these are debuffs that will actually reduce the stats of the enemy. So weaken will reduce the enemy's attack and impair will reduce the enemy's defense. Side note, this is physical attack and physical defense. To reduce an enemy's elemental defense, you use elemental breach. It's not even mentioned here, but I know. However, we rarely see people use weaken anymore. It's kind of useless these days. I think it's still useful against Hersher of the Void when you're using Phoenix, who can weaken. Anyways, just dodge, bro. Just don't get hit. Now this little tutorial can show you how to use impair.
Yamabuki armor can shield the team to block considerable damage. Tap basic attack to impair the target. Unleash ultimate with enough skill points. During ultimate, her attack mode changes, and she can inflict time lock on impaired enemies.
Right, so as Aichan has mentioned, Bronya's attack mode has changed. This is because this is a burst mode. Secondly, the time lock thing is related to the time mastery tag. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. As of now, I still want to focus on impair.
Team Swallowtail Phantasm up with Yamabuki armor to deal higher damage. Use Yamabuki armor's single shot to impair enemies. Then unleash her ultimate to inflict time lock on impaired enemies to trigger Swallowtail Phantasm's quick time event. Tap Swallowtail Phantasm's avatar to unleash her quick time event.
Right, so as mentioned before, the quick time event of Sailor is triggered by both impair and time lock. Those debuffs are not related with each other. Anyways, so what is happening is I am applying Impair and Time Lock on the enemy. Impair will lower their physical defense and Time Lock will slow them down. Once I switch to Sailor, she will deal more damage because their defense has been lowered. And I can attack on my leisure without having to deal with them attacking me back because they're slowed down. Alright, that is Weaken and Impair. Weaken is basically the same concept as Impair, just that it lowers attack instead of defense. Next up is Time Mastery. As we have seen, some Valkyries can do Time Lock. This is part of Time Mastery. They can also Time Fracture. This is also part of Time Mastery. Some Valkyries do not have Time Mastery. I'll show you a Mei that does not have Time Mastery. This will show you that when she evades that she does not actually slow down the stage. As you can see, when I dodge, it only slows down for a brief moment, but it does not actually do the slow motion bullet time from Time Fracture. Alright, Time Mastery is just mostly about Time Fracture, but anything else Time Mastery does is less important. Now, the gather tag on Valkyries means crowd control. All it means is you can pull enemies towards you. This will help when you're dealing AoE damage, maximize the damage you're dealing on all enemies without enemies being out of range. Now, I'll show you my Azure Imperia in action, doing gathering. Don't mind the under-leveled characters, I'm not here to deal damage and finish the stage, I'm just here to do some gathering. This here is a gather. Her ultimate is also a gather and it applies elemental damage bonus. And this is a gather, you get the idea. In this stage I can also spawn a black hole. This will also gather. Now then, next in the list is healing. It's not really that important, as you can see, there are not many healers are in this game. It's because you rarely actually heal. First off, some stages have health pickups. Secondly, there's a deployable elf you can use, but that's for like level 50 captain. I'll cover elves some other time. Now while I'm at it, I'll show you how Divine Prayer can heal you when using her ultimate. Right, so you can see I'm half HP right now, and then I use Divine Prayer. Her ultimate will just heal the other Valkyries. And there you go, I'm healed. I've already tried to clarify what burst is, so I'm skipping that right now. I think you get the idea already. And we're moving to Aerial, the last one. Alright, so only modern Valkyries from last year have Aerial. These Valkyries can jump up and they can attack from the air. Other than marking what Valkyries can actually do, this tag actually has no purpose other than that. Alright, I just covered everything from the list. I hope me breaking down all those icons is actually helpful for you. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next lesson.